In the gambling capital of Macau, China, a man named Lord Doyle wakes up in his lavish suite at the Royal Hotel, and the first word that leaves his mouth is fucked. Doyle is a gambling addict, buried deep in debt, owing money to nearly every casino and hotel in town. Yet, despite it all, he still clings to his fantasy. He's just one game away from hitting it big. As he gets ready for the day, a manila envelope slides under his door. Probably another bill or overdue notice. He doesn't bother to open it and heads straight out, deciding to try his luck at the Rainbow Casino. But before he can leave, the hotel manager intercepts him. The man reminds Doyle that he owes 352,000 Hong Kong dollars in combined debts to both the Royal Casino and the hotel. Credit lines, food tabs, and unpaid stays. Doyle swears he'll pay everything back in 3 days, but the manager coldly warns him that if he doesn't, the police will be called. Undeterred, Doyle walks straight into the Rainbow Casino. His game of choice is baccarat, where fortunes can be won or lost in a single hand. The rules are simple. 2 cards are dealt face down to the player with the highest wager, and the hand closest to 9 wins. Cards from 2 to 9 count as face value, while 10s and face cards are worth 0. Doyle takes his seat as a waitress approaches. He orders a drink in fluent Chinese, which impresses one of the casino staff nearby. She steps forward and introduces herself as Dao Ming. Doyle introduces himself in return, and she asks if he's ever played baccarat before. Doyle lies, claiming he's tried it 2 or 3 times. He nods toward an older woman sitting across the table and asks for her name. Dao Ming tells him everyone calls her Grandma, a seasoned pro who's been playing for years. She jokes that Grandma's husband is probably out fooling around while Grandma spends his money at the tables, calling it a good arrangement for everyone. Then Dao Ming adds that Grandma is rumored to have the gift of seeing spirits. Doyle chuckles and replies, "Let's hope the spirits are on my side." Wearing his yellow lucky gloves, he peels the sticker off his card, praying for a win. But Grandma beats him easily with a higher hand. In the following rounds, the pattern continues. Doyle loses every single hand. When he finally reaches for his wallet, it's completely empty. Seeing his desperation, Dao Ming offers him $20,000 in credit, her own money. Grandma warns her not to trust Doyle, saying he doesn't look like the type who pays back debts. But Dao Ming ignores her warning and instead asks Doyle to at least settle the bar tab. Instead of paying, Doyle orders another bottle of champagne, excuses himself to the men's room and slips out, running straight back to his hotel. The next day, Doyle wakes up, takes a long shower and heads downstairs for dinner. Outside, a commotion catches his attention. A man has just jumped to his death, apparently over gambling debts owed to Dao Ming. The man's grieving wife lashes out at Dao Ming, accusing her of preying on desperate gamblers. Doyle, ever the opportunist, steps in to calm the woman while Dao Ming flees the scene and hails a taxi. Moments later, Doyle catches up and flags down the cab for her, urging her to get in. Inside the cab, Dao Ming reminds him he still owes her $300 for the champagne. Doyle admits he doesn't have a cent on him. She finally realizes that he's completely broke. When they arrive at her apartment, Doyle follows her inside, assuring her that he'll pay her back once he wins his next game. Confidently, he insists, "I played myself into this mess, I can play my way out." He tries to comfort her, saying, "It wasn't your fault that man jumped. Suicide is just a permanent solution to a temporary problem." He quickly adds, "Don't worry, I'm not going to do that." Dao Ming admits that she thought he was a distinguished man. She says she's never seen anyone wear gloves inside a casino before. Doyle smiles and says they bring him good luck. Dao Ming shakes her head and says, "You have bad luck." Doyle brushes it off and makes her a bold offer. If she lends him some money, he can make them both rich. Dao Ming refuses, saying she's done giving out credit, and admits she's about ready to give up on life altogether. Quietly, Doyle admits he's thought about ending it too. After a pause, he guesses that the man who jumped owed her money, which must mean she owes money too. He tells her not to give up, that there are always better ways out. She gives a bitter smile and replies, "Like lending money to another addict? That stinks." Doyle fires back that she has no right to judge him, not when she makes a living off illegal side bets and shady credit lines. He admits he's fallen low but insists he still has a soul. "As far as I can see," he says, "it's no more lost than yours." Later that night, Dao Ming takes Doyle to the Hungry God Temple. She confesses that she should have never lent him credit in the first place. Curious, Doyle asks what the man's name was, the one who jumped. She shrugs and says, "You're all the same to me." Changing the subject, she tells him about the festival of hungry ghosts. In a week it'll be Ghost Day, when people burn offerings to honor the dead. With a wistful look, Dao Ming says, "I have to leave here." Doyle asks, "Where to?" She just says, "Don't try to follow me." Doyle tells her he's going to win big, and when he does, he won't just pay off his own debts, he'll pay hers too. But the next morning he wakes up to find Dao Ming gone. Looking around, he notices numbers written on his hand. Later, as he steps into the hotel elevator, a woman joins him and quickly takes a selfie with Doyle in the background. Suspicious, he follows her as she ducks into the women's restroom. He casually walks in after her and asks if she's a tourist. The woman smiles nervously and says yes. Doyle asks her to delete the selfie. She smirks and asks, "Why? You on the run?" He insists he just values his privacy and asks for her name. She says her name is Betty. But Doyle quickly realizes she's no tourist, she's a private investigator sent to track him down. When he asks what she wants, she says one word, justice. Doyle threatens to call casino security and tell them she was taking illegal photos, unless she pays him $500 to forget it. Betty smirks and says, "You really are down to your last penny, aren't you, Mr. Riley?" That's when it hits him, she knows his real name. Panicking, Doyle grabs her bag and bolts. A chase erupts through the casino corridors with Betty finally catching up, only to realize her phone is missing. She demands it back, but Doyle tells her he'll return it for $500. Reluctantly, she pays, but he doesn't return the phone. Instead, he heads straight back to the tables and starts playing baccarat again. This time he wins. Feeling invincible, Doyle tries to offer Betty a $10,000 bribe, but she refuses. He insists he's not a criminal, but she reminds him he stole from his client and is a compulsive gambler. "I'm not a gambler," he snaps. Trying to lighten the mood, he invites her to dinner and a dance, but she resists and walks away. Later that night, Doyle plays another round of baccarat against Grandma and loses $10,000 in a single hand. The next day, with only $500 left, he gambles again, and loses it all. Betty shows up, snapping another picture of him at the table. This time she sits him down and lays it all out. Calmly, she shows him documents from Stricken Garland Wealth Management, a UK-based firm. She explains that the company has decided not to involve the police, for now. Instead, they've hired Huntsworth Investigations to track him down. Riley, or Doyle as he now calls himself, once worked as a wealth manager. Before vanishing, he stole £900,000 from an elderly woman. Betty sets down her business card. Her real name is Cynthia, but we'll keep calling her Betty. She tells him she's been on his trail for months, though it went cold in Manila, where Doyle had faked his own death, complete with an official death certificate under his real name. Now the firm is giving him one last chance. Deposit the stolen money back into Stricken Garland's account within 24 hours, or be deported to the UK. Doyle glances at the numbers still written on his hand, then decides to look for Dao Ming. He heads to her apartment and rings the bell, but no one answers. As he turns to leave, his eyes land on a postcard of Llama Island pinned near her door. For reasons he can't explain, he decides to go there. Later, Doyle meets up with an old friend named Adrian and demands the $8,000 he owes him, saying he needs to catch a boat to Llama Island in 3 hours. Adrian shrugs and says he doesn't have $8,000 but can give him 2. To ease the tension, he buys Doyle a drink. Over their drinks, Adrian sighs and says, "You were never tough enough for this gambling life, Riley." Doyle freezes when he realizes Adrian was the one who ratted him out. Adrian doesn't deny it. "Did she pay you?" Doyle asks. Adrian shakes his head. "No, Betty offered to cover my tracks in exchange for your location." Seeing the look on Doyle's face, Adrian tells him not to do anything stupid. Then, trying to lighten the mood, he shares an old gambler's myth. When a gambler dies, he says, he wakes up in a place where he wins every hand, every bet, and beautiful women surround him. Eventually, he turns to the man beside him and says, "I didn't think I'd make it to heaven. I thought I was headed for the other place." Doyle quietly finishes the story for him. This is the other place. Doyle boards a boat to Llama Island, his mind weighed down by thoughts of ending it all. When he gets off, he heads to a small restaurant for breakfast. After eating, he tries to slip out without paying but spots 2 security guards by the door. He quickly retreats to his seat. The waitress walks over and asks him to settle his bill. Instead, Doyle orders another dish. She tells him that's not happening until he pays. Doyle pulls out his empty wallet, then the postcard of Llama Island. When he looks up, he freezes. Dao Ming walks in and sits beside him. They share a light-hearted conversation. She teases him for coming all the way from Macau without any money. Doyle laughs and says it slipped his mind. Dao Ming smirks and calls him out, saying that's nonsense. Doyle asks her what she's doing there, what the odds are of running into her again. She replies softly, "It's not chance." Suddenly, Doyle's heart starts pounding, his vision blurs, and everything goes dark. When he opens his eyes again, he's lying in bed, the smell of food drifting through the air. He heads downstairs where Dao Ming greets him gently. She tells him he collapsed and was taken to the hospital for 2 days, and she brought him here afterward. Realizing he's well past the 24-hour deadline, Doyle says he needs to go back to Macau to settle his debts. Dao Ming shakes her head and tells him he should stay. "If you go back," she warns, "the gambling will kill you." Later, Dao Ming takes Doyle on a boat ride across the misty bay. As the boat drifts, Doyle opens up about his family, how gambling and drinking run deep in his bloodline. Dao Ming cuts the engine and lets the silence settle. Doyle looks at his hand and asks about the numbers written there. "That's a test," she says simply, then dives into the water. Doyle jumps in after her without thinking. That night, Dao Ming asks softly, "What are you running from?" Doyle hesitates, then admits he stole money from a rich old woman. He asks why she saved him. "Because you and I are the same," she replies. Then she tells him about her past, how in her village, girls were seen as bad luck. When she was old enough, she stole money from her parents and ran away to start over. A week later, her father died of heartbreak. She worked for years sending money home, hoping her mother would forgive her. But every time the money came back untouched. She goes on to tell Doyle about an old Buddhist tale, the realm of hungry ghosts. It's a place for souls consumed by greed. They have huge mouths and thin necks, she says. No matter how much they eat or drink, they're never satisfied. Doyle asks quietly, "Is that where we are?" Dao Ming looks at him for a long moment and says, "It's not too late for you." The next morning, Doyle wakes up to an empty house. Rain pounds against the windows as he calls out for Dao Ming, but no answer comes. He cooks breakfast for two and waits, listening to the storm. Hours later, a loud noise echoes from a nearby shack. He rushes over, finds the door locked, and spots a combination padlock. He tries the numbers written on his hand. The door clicks open. Inside, the shack is empty except for a wooden hatch in the floor. Doyle pulls it open and finds a rope leading down toward the water. When he tugs on it, 2 heavy bags of cash rise from below. He hesitates, torn between guilt and temptation, but greed wins. Doyle takes the money and leaves Dao Ming's house, heading straight back to Macau. There, he exchanges the cash for casino chips and sits down at the baccarat table. To his astonishment, he wins every single hand, again and again, unstoppable. He pays off all his debts at the Royal Hotel and Casino, but strange things start happening. Shadows move in his peripheral vision, and he feels eyes watching him from every corner. The casino manager calls him in and says his winning streak isn't humanly possible. He explains that security footage shows a shadowy figure standing behind Doyle at every game. "You've got a spirit attached to you," the manager tells him. Doyle demands to see the footage, but the manager refuses and bans him from playing there again. Frustrated and spiraling, Doyle eats uncontrollably, stuffing food into his mouth as his heart races faster and faster. When he bends over a bucket to vomit, he catches a glimpse of his reflection. His face is pale, twisted, almost inhuman. Later, he calls the manager again, demanding one last game. He offers to bet 8 million Hong Kong dollars on a single hand. "If I lose," he says, "it means there are no ghosts. But if I win, I'll walk away from Macau forever." The manager agrees. When Betty hears about Doyle's massive bet, she's furious. She calls him insane, but Doyle pleads for one final chance. He tells her he's still short 3/4 of the money he owes the old woman. "Even though we chose different paths, you chasing the law, me running from it, we both ended up here," he says. "But we can still change our destinies." At the table, a casino employee informs Doyle that his opponent is Prince Lorenzo of Monte Carlo. They play round after round, and Doyle wins every single hand. His streak remains unbroken. Doyle clears his debt with stricken garland and even slips Betty 50 grand as a personal thank you before walking away. Grinning, he tells her, "You should live a little." Just as he's about to leave, Betty stops him and for the first time, smiles. "How about that dance?" she says. Later, Doyle visits the Rainbow Casino and asks Grandma where Dao Ming is. Grandma looks at him sadly and says Dao Ming doesn't work there anymore. She drowned herself by the temple on the first night of the Hungry Ghost Festival. Doyle shakes his head, saying that's impossible. "I was with her until morning," he insists. But Grandma tells him she's dead, adding that they didn't even have enough money for her cremation. Grandma invites him to play one last game with her, but Doyle refuses. He rushes to Dao Ming's apartment and calls out her name. This time the door is unlocked. Inside, unopened letters are piled by the doorway. He takes out the postcard of Lama Island, and his mind flashes back, to the restaurant when his heart began racing, to the boathouse when he first woke up confused. And for the first time he understands. It was Dao Ming's spirit that had been guiding him all along. She had saved him from becoming one of the hungry ghosts, consumed by his own greed and endless hunger. Outside, the crackle of firecrackers fills the night air. It's the Hungry Ghost Festival, when people burn offerings for wandering spirits. Doyle steps outside holding the money and throws it into the fire, an offering for Dao Ming. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of the exciting content coming your way. Every new video is made with you in mind, and I'd love to have you here for the journey. See you in the next one.